vote on the declaration. And you can watch the Senate debate live now on our companion network, C-SPAN 2. Well, earlier today, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi spoke to reporters about the Mueller report vote and the FAA's recent grounding of Boeing 737 MAX airplanes. The House is not in session next week.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
You ready for St. Patrick's Day weekend coming up? We will shortly be welcoming the President of the United States and the Taoiseach of Ireland, the Prime Minister, to the Capitol for bipartisan bicameral luncheon to honor St. Patrick and the beauty of immigration to our country, of people coming from Ireland. I said to I'm going to say this toast to them that my grandchildren, I don't have Irish grandparents, but I have Irish grandchildren, Ian, Liam, Sean, and Ryan. And they had this toast: dance as though no one is watching, love as though you've never loved before, sing as if no one can hear you, and live as though heaven is on earth. So beautiful. I said, is that a tradition in your father's family? And they said, no, it's a toast we saw in the Shannon airport on a poster. So much for that. In any event, I'll tell you this, which I think is very funny, and I will tell them, see if you think it's funny. When they had the first dinner, President Ronald Reagan, Speaker Tip O'Neill, coming together, putting differences aside on this Irish luncheon. The Taoiseach didn't come the first year. It was not until the next year the Taoiseach came. But the luncheon had the President, the Speaker, 16 members of Congress, 12 of them from Massachusetts. Different now. Anyway, here we are. This is a very special day for us beyond the wonder of St. Patrick. Today on the Senate side, the Senate will hopefully vote for the Constitution of the United States to uphold the oath of office that we all take by, again, voting to reject the president's unconstitutional measure that does violence on the Constitution. That's a good thing. We'll then send the bill to the president. In the House, we voted to protect the truth for the American people. Overwhelmingly, I think over 400 votes. 4 voted present. Everyone else voted for the Mueller resolution, which would ensure that the American people get the truth. We will send that bill over to the Senate. As we leave for this district work period, members are going home again to talk about what we promised for the people. Lower health care costs by lowering the cost of prescription drugs, bigger paychecks by building the infrastructure of America in a green way, and cleaner government. And we are so proud to have passed H.R. 1 last Friday to that end. In regard to the other 2 categories, hearings and even some legislation has been marked up in terms of moving us closer to passing an infrastructure bill. Will work. It's something that in both of those areas, lowering prescription drug prices and building infrastructure, 2 areas that the president has said he wants to work on together. So we're moving in that direction in a bipartisan way. At the same time, we're very dismayed by the president's budget. Budget is supposed to be a statement of our national values. What's important to us as a nation should be reflected in how we allocate our resources. I'm fond of saying around here, show me your values, show me your budget. The budget that the president put forth is appalling. And it cuts $2 trillion out of Medicare and Medicaid. Well, the list goes on and on about things that it does. Steals $2 trillion from Medicaid and Medicare, hurting families and farmers and hungry families by slashing $220 billion from the SNAP food assistance and cutting agriculture department budget by almost 15%, pushes affordable college further from reach by cutting $207 billion from student loan initiatives, and endangering life-saving medical research by cutting $5 billion from the National Institutes of Health. How could it be? If there is scientific opportunity, it's almost a biblical way to power to save lives, the power to cure. If we have scientific opportunity, I believe we have a moral responsibility to fund it, and that is bipartisan in the Congress, in the House, and in the Senate. So we will fight these cuts to the National Institutes of Health, including cuts at the National Cancer Institute, and continue his demands for billions of wasteful dollars for his ineffective wall. In addition to what I mentioned about for the people agenda, we were pleased this past week to have introduced H.R. 5, Mr. Cicilline's bill for LGBTQ community to have full access to be protected fully by the Civil Rights Act, and H.R. 6, the legislation to help our Dreamers, temporary protective status folks, and DED, and also as I said, the gun legislation of the week before. So when I talked to our outside friends, grassroots activists and the rest, they're very thrilled about H.R. 8, the bill to end gun violence, to provide gun violence prevention, and also 1112 that closes the South Carolina loophole. So with our original agenda for the people, the additional protecting the Dreamers, et cetera, protecting people, the LGBTQ, and also, again, ending gun violence in our country. We've had quite a remarkable legislative achievements as we go forward. And by the time we will have been here 100 days, shortly after we come back, we'll have even more results in this regard. And one more, and that's net neutrality that we talked about last week, which will come to the floor shortly after our return. So we have a full agenda. We're making progress, and that's what we said we would do, with transparency, with as much bipartisanship as possible, and in a unifying way for our country. Any questions?
You said in your comments that were reported this week about impeaching the president just isn't worth it. But if the Mueller report comes back and suggests criminal activity in the White House, could you change your mind?
Well, it's a question of when I say what isn't worth our time. 40% of the American people cannot withstand a $500 surprise expense, be it their water heater or their carburetor or whatever it happens to be. Our focus was on what we said we would do: health care, job creation, cleaner government, gun safety, issues like that. And it is not worth our time to take our attention from that. And if I'm somebody in the public who is feeling that financial pain, and I see us focusing on one thing and another, but not on my financial interest, that is not a source of hope for people. If the Mueller report comes back with information, I don't think we should impeach a president for political reasons, and I don't think we should not impeach a president for political reasons. But you have to be ironclad in terms of your facts, and we'll see where that takes us.
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker.
Madam
Speaker. Beto O'Rourke announced.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Beto O'Rourke announced today he is running for president. What, in your view, was Beto O'Rourke's signature accomplishment as a member of the House?
Beto brought a great deal of vitality to Congress. One of the issues in his, as I haven't been asked this question, but I just know of his record here. When he came as a real champion for the environment. He got a great deal of support from the environmental community in his district. He won in a primary on that subject. And also, he's a member of the Armed Services Committee, a strong member of the Armed Services Committee, which is very important for his district. So in preserving our planet and protecting our people, there are at least two areas in addition to his vitality in so many other ways. I think all of our candidates are great. I just say to all of them who ask, just be yourself, what you believe in. Show them what's in your heart. You can talk about the facts and the figures, and they expect you to know that. So you have to demonstrate your why. What is your purpose? Why are you running? What do you know about the subjects that you know best, and can your judgment be trusted on that and for other reasons? How do you expect to get something done? And that's all up here. Show them what's in your heart. If you show them what you believe, even if they don't agree with you all the time, they will trust your authenticity. That's what I say to all of them, and I think that Beto is a welcome addition to the field.
And do you think that the experience he has here in the House is a strong enough foundation to jump to the Oval Office?
And you ask me that when we have a president in the United States and never, please. Yes. The answer is yes. Yes.
Madam Speaker, thank you. You talk about the.
Didn't you just have a question? Oh, that was last week.
Not today. That was last week. I had a couple last week, if I recall. Anyway, thank you. We have the luncheon with the Taoiseach and the President today. I know when you had a good personal relationship with President George W. Bush and you used to use some of these social occasions to talk policy with him. I know you're not in the same room with the President very often. Is there anything you would like to bring up with the President today, since you will be in the same room at the luncheon today?
No, I don't think we use this luncheon as any policy discussion other than what we say at the podium. And that's what it would be. Now, I was
So
remembering.
none of these disputes about the budget, none of these.
No. No, the president is a guest in our house. We will treat him as a guest in our house and are honored by his presence to welcome the Taoiseach. A Taoiseach who's LGBTQ, his father is an Indian, as we say, only in America.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Speaker. How do you think the FAA handled the Ethiopian air crash and questions about Boeing 737 MAX and the timing of when they grounded planes?
I do know that our chairman of our committee, Mr. DeFazio, and the chair of the subcommittee, Mr. Rick Larson of Washington State, were right on it, and they were getting as much information as they could from the FAA on it, so that we would be making a judgment based on fact. The fact that so many countries had already made their decision. Again, just because we would ask for it doesn't mean it would happen. So I was pleased that the president made the decision that he made. Yeah.
Madam Speaker, on our HR 1, there's been some criticism from the ACLU about it in regards to the freedom of speech issue. And as far as 16-year-olds voting, where do you see that going into the future?
Well, I disagree with the ACLU on this. In terms of legislation, we couldn't be prouder than HR 1. This is about reducing the role of big, dark, special interest money in politics and empowering small donors. It's about ending voter suppression. It's about making redistricting fair. It's really a source of joy and hope to so many people in the country. I myself, personally, I'm not speaking for my caucus, I myself have always been for lowering the voting age to 16. I think it's really important to capture kids when they're in high school, when they're interested in all of this, when they're learning about government, to be able to vote. That is not necessary. In other words, some of the priorities in this bill are about transparency and openness and accessibility and the rest. That's a subject of debate. But my view is that I would welcome that. But I've been in that position for a long time.
Madam Speaker, on the Green New Deal?
Okay.
I'll come back to you. Okay.
When you made the comment about impeachment to my colleague Johan,
Yes.
were you getting worried that some of the members of your own caucus and some of the presidential candidates were getting farther ahead of where
No.
really most of you were?
No, I didn't. I made the comment that I made because I make it every week. I've made it July, August, September. I've made it all through the campaign. I made it in our transition, and I've made it every week. It didn't seem to catch on until I had a gimmick. He's not worth it. Boom, it explodes. So many of you have said to me, why are you saying this now? Because I've said it almost every day. But if I frame it that way, it gets more
But you
attention.
said
So I
the-
wasn't getting worried about anything.
said it was
As I
news.
said,
But you said it was
I'm a
news.
longtime member of the Ethics Committee, and there we just followed the facts, the rules of the House, and the law. No hearsay, no subjective attitudes, all objective. The rules of the House, the law of the land, the facts of the case. And the facts of the case will argue, will present a different challenge when we see what that is.
Were you being
Yes, ma'am, one last question.
So Republican leaders were here an hour ago talking about the Green New Deal.
Yeah.
They say it's going to it's going to get rid of jobs, it's going to raise the price of health care, all kinds of things. What's your response to
I'm
that?
really impressed. They care about health care. They who took away the individual mandate, they who scores of time wanted to eliminate the Affordable Care Act. I've never even known that they had an interest, except maybe to take $2 trillion out of Medicare and Medicaid. As with all of the initiatives that you're hearing about, they will go to committee. That has different committees because it has different pieces to it. But I'm more excited about our Select Committee on Climate, chaired by Kathy Castor of Florida, which will be having its hearings, evidence-based recommendations, some of which will be consistent with some of what's in the Green Deal, new Green Deal, and some of it might be even beyond that. But I'm not standing by any characterization that the Republicans have of anything. Unfamiliar as they may be with sending items to committee, because that's not what they ever did, this is what we will be doing, is sending it to committee. I do want to salute the Green Deal in this respect, not the particulars, because we have to take it one at a time, but in the respect of, again, raising the profile of an issue, which is a challenge generationally to preserve this planet. It's a health issue, a public health issue in terms of clean air, clean water. It's a jobs issue in terms of the United States being preeminent in green technologies throughout the world. It's a national security issue. Just read what our national security experts have to say. Generals, admirals, again, national security experts have to say about the challenge to global security that the climate crisis is presenting. And it's a moral issue. We all have a responsibility to pass this planet on to future generations in a responsible way. I myself, as a Catholic, believe, as do many of our evangelical friends and the rest who share our belief, that this is God's creation and that we have a moral responsibility to be good stewards of it. So this is a very high priority, as you may or not know. It was my flagship issue when I was Speaker the first time. So I welcome any enthusiasms in that regard. But as we legislate, we'll go through committee to see what the best possible approach is. I wish you all a very happy St. Patrick's Day. We will have a good deal of activity in the districts in terms of mobilization at the grassroots level around For the People agenda. Lower health care costs, bigger paychecks, cleaner government, safety with our gun safety bill, and the list goes on. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.